You clearly don't understand what David needs, Sarah snapped, her manicured hands gesturing dismissively at the treehouse workshop my father had built for my kids. This space is wasted on your children's little art projects. My son is a gifted scientist. I stood in my backyard, watching my sister-in-law march around the carefully crafted workshop where my twins, Emma and Lucas, had spent countless hours tinkering with their grandfather before he passed. The space was their inheritance, specifically mentioned in Dad's will as the creative workshop for my beloved grandchildren. But Sarah had other plans. My name is Olivia Parker, and at 35, I never expected to be fighting my brother's wife over my children's inheritance. The workshop wasn't just any treehouse. It was a 2-story masterpiece my father had spent his retirement building, complete with proper electrical wiring, workbenches, and storage space for all the kids' projects. He'd been a high school science teacher who believed in hands-on learning, encouraging my twins to explore their creativity through both art and science. David needs a proper lab, Sarah continued, pulling down the art supplies my kids had carefully organized. These childish supplies are taking up valuable space. My son is already reading at a college level, and his IQ test results prove he's exceptional. This space should go to someone who'll use it properly. I watched her toss my children's projects into a garbage bag, fighting to keep my voice steady. Sarah, this workshop was left to Emma and Lucas. It's legally theirs. She turned to me, her perfectly lined lips curving into a condescending smile. Oh please, your brother agrees with me. David's gifts need nurturing. We're doing you a favor, really. Your kids can find somewhere else to play with their crayons. The worst part was she wasn't lying about my brother, Mark. He'd always been easily influenced by Sarah's aggressive personality, and lately he'd become obsessed with proving their son was some kind of prodigy. The fact that David was only 7 and already being pushed so hard worried me, but my concerns fell on deaf ears. 2 days later, I came home from work to find the workshop completely transformed. My kids' art supplies, science projects, and tools were gone, replaced with expensive-looking equipment I knew Sarah had bought with the money from selling my children's things. She even changed the locks. Emma and Lucas stood at the window, watching their cousin David enter their workshop with an armful of textbooks. "Mom," Emma whispered, her voice trembling, "Grandpa wanted us to have that place. He said so." "I know, sweetheart," I replied, hugging them both. What I didn't tell them was that I'd been prepared for something like this. Sarah had a history of taking what she wanted, always justifying it as best for David. But this time, she'd gone too far. That evening, my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "David's already setting up his first major science project. This is exactly what this space needed. A real future scientist, not amateur artists." I didn't respond, but I did make a phone call to my father's old friend and lawyer, Michael Stevens. "They did exactly what you warned me about," I told him. "How soon can we proceed?" "I got everything ready," Michael replied. "Your father was very specific in his will, and we've documented every step of Sarah's actions. But are you sure you want to wait? We could stop this now." I thought about the upcoming science fair, where David was expected to present his first major project. Sarah had been bragging about it for weeks, telling everyone how her son would prove he was a true prodigy. "No," I said firmly, "let's stick to the plan. Sometimes people need to learn their lessons publicly." Over the next few weeks, I watched Sarah parade various parents through the workshop, showing off David's science lab and explaining how her gifted son needed this space more than my artistically inclined children. Each time, she made sure my kids could hear her, as if their pain somehow validated her actions. Emma and Lucas, however, didn't stop creating. They moved their projects to our garage, working quietly and diligently. I noticed they were spending a lot of time with their grandfather's old research notes. But I didn't pry. They had always been self-motivated, and I trusted them to find their way. The day before the science fair, Sarah sent a mass email to the entire family. "Come see David unveil his groundbreaking project. This is what happens when gifted children are given proper resources. Some children just need more than others." That evening, as I helped Emma and Lucas load their own project into the car, Lucas looked up at me with his grandfather's determined expression. "Mom, did you read what Grandpa wrote about combining art and science?" I smiled, remembering my father's passionate beliefs about cross-disciplinary learning. "I did, honey. He always said the best discoveries come from creative thinking. Well, Emma chimed in, her eyes sparkling. We think he was right. And tomorrow, everyone else will see it too. As I tucked them into bed that night, my phone lit up with another text from Sarah. Hope you'll come tomorrow. It's important for the twins to see what real scientific achievement looks like. They might learn something. I looked at my sleeping children, thought about my father's wisdom, and typed back 2 words. We'll be there. The science fair would become a day Sarah would never forget. Though not for the reasons she expected. Sometimes the best response to cruelty isn't immediate confrontation. It's letting people's actions catch up with them naturally. And tomorrow, everything would come full circle in ways Sarah never could have predicted. The school gymnasium buzzed with excitement as students and parents set up their science fair projects. Sarah stood by David's elaborate display, wearing her signature self-satisfied smile as she directed workers to position special lighting around what she called the centerpiece of the entire fair. I helped Emma and Lucas set up their seemingly simple project in a corner booth. Just a collection of recycled materials, art supplies, and what looked like basic electronics. Sarah walked past, barely containing her snicker. Oh, how creative, she said, emphasizing the last word like it was an insult. At least they tried. David's project dominated the center of the room, an expensive-looking display about renewable energy that I strongly suspected had more to do with Sarah's wallet than my nephew's actual work. The equipment looked eerily familiar. Some of it had clearly come from my kids' workshop. Mom, Emma whispered, adjusting something behind their display board, is everything ready? I nodded, noticing Michael Stevens slip quietly into the gymnasium. He caught my eye and gave a subtle nod. The school principal, Mrs. Anderson, began her rounds with the judges, starting from the far end of the room. Sarah was practically vibrating with anticipation. David, honey, stand up straight. Remember everything you prepared. She had invited half the school board to witness her son's moment of triumph, and they clustered around her like satellites, drawn in by her confident predictions of David's future scientific brilliance. As the judges approached David's booth, Sarah launched into a well-rehearsed speech about her son's exceptional gifts. As you can see, when truly gifted children are given the right resources, she paused to throw a pointed look in our direction. Amazing things happen. The judges nodded politely, but I noticed their eyes repeatedly drifting toward Emma and Lucas's corner. Something about their project was catching attention, even from across the room. Finally, the judging team reached my children's booth. Can you explain your project? One judge asked, adjusting his glasses. Emma and Lucas shared a quick glance before Lucas began. Our grandfather taught us that art and science aren't separate things, they work together. He pressed a button, and their display came to life. What happened next left the entire gymnasium silent. Using recycled materials and artistic techniques their grandfather had taught them, my twins had created an innovative water filtration system that also generated beautiful light patterns. The judges leaned in, fascinated by the combination of environmental science and artistic design. The filtration system uses principles of fluid dynamics, Emma explained, pointing to the swirling patterns, but we added fluorescent elements to make the process visible. The patterns actually help us monitor the filtration efficiency. And look, Lucas added, pressing another button. The patterns shifted, creating a mesmerizing display. We use art principles to make the scientific data beautiful and easier to understand. One judge turned to me, eyebrows raised. This is remarkable. Where did they learn to combine disciplines like this? Before I could answer, Emma spoke up. From our grandfather's workshop. He left us all his research notes about combining art and science. We found them in our special Treehouse lab. She emphasized the last words, looking directly at Sarah. Sarah's face had gone pale. What workshop? One of the school board members asked innocently. The one our grandfather built for us, Lucas explained. He left it to us in his will. It's where we developed this project. Well, until recently. The school board member turned to Sarah, confusion evident. But I thought you said that was David's personal lab. Michael Stevens chose that moment to step forward, folder in hand. Actually, he said clearly, I have the will right here. The workshop was specifically left to Emma and Lucas Parker, with explicit instructions that it be maintained as a space for them to explore both art and science. along with documented proof of Mrs. Parker's illegal seizure of the property. The gymnasium erupted in whispers. Sarah's carefully crafted image began crumbling as the truth emerged. David, looking confused and uncomfortable, turned to his mother. "Mom, you said the workshop was given to us." "I also have proof," Michael continued calmly, "of Mrs. Parker selling the children's equipment and materials, which were also protected under the will." The principal's face hardened as she looked at Sarah. "Mrs. Parker, we need to discuss this in my office, immediately." Sarah's supporters began backing away, their expressions shifting from admiration to disapproval. The judges huddled together, whispering intently while glancing between David's expensive display and my children's innovative project. "This isn't fair," Sarah suddenly burst out, her composure finally cracking. "David is gifted. He deserves that space more than they do. Look at his project. Look at all the advanced equipment." "The equipment you stole from us," Emma said quietly, but her voice carried in the now silent gymnasium. "We didn't need expensive things. Grandpa taught us that science is about creativity and observation, not just fancy equipment." As Sarah was led away by the principal, the judges finished their deliberations. The tension in the gymnasium was palpable. David stood alone by his project, looking lost and embarrassed. Despite everything, my heart ached for him. He was just a child caught in his mother's overwhelming ambitions. "Before we announce the winners," the head judge began, "we want to note that our decision was based solely on scientific merit, innovation, and presentation." He paused, making eye contact with various participants. "The first place award for this year's science fair goes to Emma and Lucas Parker." The gymnasium erupted in applause. My twins hugged each other, their eyes shining with a mixture of joy and vindication. Their project had won, not because of expensive equipment or privileged access, but because they truly understood what their grandfather had tried to teach them, that the best discoveries come from combining creativity with scientific thinking. Later that evening, as we packed up their project, Mark, my brother, approached us. He looked tired and ashamed. "Olivia," he said quietly, "I'm sorry. I should have stopped Sarah. I got caught up in all her talk about David being gifted, about needing special resources." "It's not just about the workshop, Mark," I replied, watching Emma and Lucas carefully wrap up their project. "It's about respecting Dad's wishes, about letting children develop their own interests instead of forcing them into roles we choose for them." He nodded, glancing over at David, who was sitting alone, his expensive project already dismantled. "I know. We've been pushing him so hard to be this perfect scientific prodigy that we never asked what he actually wants." As if on cue, David wandered over to Emma and Lucas. "Your project was really cool," he said hesitantly. "The way you made the water patterns light up. Could you maybe show me how you did that?" My twins exchanged glances, then Emma smiled. "Sure. Actually, Grandpa left lots of notes about combining art and science. If you're interested." The next week, with Michael's help, we reclaimed the workshop. Sarah was facing legal consequences for her actions, and Mark had agreed to family counseling to address the pressure they'd been putting on David. As we cleaned up the space, returning it to its original purpose, I found one of my father's old notebooks. Inside, he had written, "Science without creativity is just procedure. Art without understanding is just decoration. The magic happens when we let them dance together." Emma and Lucas installed their science fair project in one corner of the workshop. To my surprise, David started visiting regularly, not to conduct elaborate experiments, but to learn from his cousins about finding his own path between art and science. It turned out he had a talent for technical drawing and loved illustrating scientific concepts. 3 months later, Sarah called me. Her voice had lost its usual arrogance. "I was wrong," she said simply. "I was so focused on proving David was special that I couldn't see how much I was hurting him and your children. I'm in therapy now, trying to understand why I felt such a need to compete, to take from others." I listened quietly, thinking about how much had changed. The workshop was alive again with the sound of children's laughter and experimentation. Emma and Lucas had started a small science club, teaching other kids about combining artistic thinking with scientific principles. Even David was flourishing, finally free to explore his own interests rather than living up to his mother's expectations. "The workshop is open to David whenever he wants to visit," I told Sarah. "But it has to be his choice, not yours." As I hung up, I looked out at the Treehouse workshop where my father's legacy lived on, not just in the physical space, but in the lessons he had taught about creativity, curiosity, and the importance of letting children find their own way. Emma and Lucas had proven that sometimes the best revenge isn't about winning or punishing others. It's about staying true to yourself and letting the truth emerge in its own time. My father would have been proud, not just of the science fair victory, but of how his grandchildren had understood his most important lesson. The greatest discoveries come not from competing with others, but from being brave enough to follow your own path, even when others try to tell you it's the wrong one.